there, and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer, and joining me on this show is my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Avril Lavigne and Chad Kroeger of the Terrace get together? There's no real explanation for that one. It's just I struggle to find it fathomable that anyone can be romantically sexual with the front man from Nickelback.
But which Avril Lavigne is it? The original or the stand-in?
That's right. One of the conspiracy theories is that Avril Lavigne was killed and has been replaced with a body double. Am I right in saying?
Yes, that's right. I'll be honest. I find the whole thing unlikely.
It's the same as Paul McCartney, wasn't it? In the 60s, he was killed in a motorbike accident, and was replaced by a stand-in. And on the run out of, I think is it Strawberry Fields Forever? You can hear Strawberry Paul.
Is the album cover to Abbey Road? Was that not supposed to be some kind of clue to the fact that he was actually deceased?
What were the clues? I mean, they're all just basically walking on a road.
I don't know. Something to do with the fact that he isn't wearing any shoes. Like somehow that was a clue to the fact that he'd passed on. I just think it was probably that didn't happen.
Yeah, you're really struggling to try and make sense of that. But no, Paul McCartney's still very much at large. I think he was playing a pop concert at the tail end of last year. Brought Ringo Starr out.
Yeah, he played the guitar on a song recently with who was it now? It was three of them. It was him, Rihanna, and
Kanye West.
Yes, yeah, a real collaboration for the ages.
I'll be honest, I've been listening to the Beatles a lot lately. I think the Beatles are really, that's the most entry-level thing to say of all time, isn't it? By the way, can I just shock you? I think the Beatles are really, really good.
What's your favourite Beatles album?
Ooh, I think it's probably not just my favourite Beatles album, it's probably objectively the best album of all time. I actually think it's Revolver. I think Revolver has got so many good things about it, and it's incredible just to think of the band. The journey they went on, and so as I know this is fairly NPC stuff to talk about, but the journey they went on in such a short space of time, I think it's incredible. It's got Yellow Submarine in it. That song's shit, and I think that's the only black mark on Revolver, because other than that, it's completely flawless. I like Hard Day's Night as well. Hard Day's Night's a great album.
I really like their Greatest Hits album. I think that's probably my favourite.
Right, we'll move on from this discussion about the Beatles, because of course you don't come onto this podcast to listen to me and Shaughan talk about conspiracy theories or talk about the best of the Beatles. No. We will be discussing some lower league football over the next 133 minutes or so. We're not joking. We're going to be casting our eyes across the lower leagues over the last 7 days. We'll be discussing pretty much all of the action from the weekend and discussing all of the action from through the week. I think this is perhaps the grabbiest grab bag podcast we're ever likely to record. And you know something, Shaughan, when I was researching this podcast, we'd agreed to talk about stuff from the weekend. And I was flicking through flash scores like, there's some games taking place tonight. There's 3 games. 3 games took place on Tuesday. So I had to do a bit of research for that as well. And it prompted a drastic refocus, and I think the listeners appreciate. See a 3-game podcast, fine, because you can watch the games, you can pause them, you can look, you can research, you can go back, you can transfer market, soccer base and whatever. When it comes to the grab bags, it's really anything goes. There's so much more work that goes into them, and there's 50 minutes more worth of talking time.
It should be easier because you're not really going in depth, but somehow it's actually more difficult. See, when I realised there was midweek fixtures, I was crestfallen.
Yeah. Yes, I was crestfallen as well. So, dear listener, if any point Shaughan and I lose interest, and let's be honest, by the time we've got to go through all 4 League 2 fixtures that took place, if we begin to flag at any point, at least we're getting our excuses in nice and early. But before we get started, is everything okay with you?
Yes, very good. Thank you. What about yourself?
Yes, it's okay. I had a bit of a Kafka-esque nightmare trying to take delivery of a vase that subsequently I didn't like and I've had to return. But the less said about that, the better. I'll tell you this, DPD, they have made a very powerful enemy in yours truly, Mark Hateley. Very unimpressed with their so-called VIP service. There's $9.99 I'll never see again.
So wait, you paid £9.99 for some kind of very important delivery service from them. What does that involve exactly?
What happens is the delivery, it comes with a PIN number, right? So you've got to quote the PIN number to the driver. So normally anytime I get stuff delivered to the house, you get it put to the post office or pick-up points in the local area. It just makes a lot more sense. But this is the first time I've ever had a package that requires a PIN number. Therefore, you have to be in to collect it. So there's looking at the redelivery times. You tried to deliver it on a Wednesday. I was at work. I couldn't make it. Looking at the redelivery times, it was all just through the week. However, if you wanted it delivered on the weekend, you could upgrade to the VIP service for $9.99. On Saturday, I thought, well, I don't have much on in the morning. I can easily stay in the house for a couple of hours. Came to past midday, and the package wasn't here. And then I thought, this is some kind of sick joke. Phoned up the call centre on Sunday and asked, like, where's this package? I've paid $9.99 for it. Where is it? And have you ever had that where you phone somebody and you just know they're talking nonsense to you? The woman on the phone was just like, I guarantee it's out for delivery. I said, I'm looking at my information here. There's nothing at all to say this package is out for delivery. She says, sir, I can guarantee it's out for delivery. And if it's not, I'll be out for you on Monday. What is it? It's either coming out today. You're guaranteed it's coming out today. So what does Monday have to do with anything? So eventually I just rebooked a delivery and had to work the rest of yesterday, Tuesday, from home rather than being in the office. I took delivery of this vase and I didn't like it. It's going back.
Why? Because obviously you must have liked something about it to make the purchase. What put you off when you saw it in real life?
Just shit. It's horrible and blocky, and I thought it looked quite abstract and thought it would look quite nice with the rest of the stuff, but no, I've completely overestimated my own sense of taste, so it's definitely going back.
Were you going to place something in it, or was it just going to stand alone?
Well, there's the other thing as well. I bought some dried flowers. They were pink and they just didn't work. The dimensions of the vase coupled with the pink dried flowers, it just didn't work. It was just a horrendous purchase. It was poor on my part, and the flowers have gone in the bin. I couldn't see a place to put them in the house. The vase has gone back. Just two very rash purchases. I don't often get things wrong when it comes to my interior design, but I made a real faux pas with that.
That sounds like money very poorly spent all round.
Very poorly spent. I think it's the worst money I've ever spent since. Remember that Herbie jersey that I wore on A View from the Terrace?
Yes. Yeah, that was not your wisest decision.
I looked like some lunatic NASCAR driver who'd got lost in his way to the track. Found myself in this studio, a bunch of VLs talking about Scottish football. Sold it on eBay and sold it for about 60% of what I paid for it. Serves me right.
You live and learn.
Yes. Well, Shaughan, speaking of living and learning, I think it's time to bring up the first correction and clarification of 2025. Great stuff. We've done one podcast together this year, and already we've got some explaining to do. Now, we were talking on the show a fortnight ago about the loan players at Alloa Athletic who had starred for them and propelled them into the playoffs, and how Andy Graham was struggling to reprise the same degree of excitement from the current crop. One of these players was Ethan Sutherland. Mm-hmm. I said he was on the fringes of the St Mirren team this season. That's absolutely incorrect because he left to join Wolves in the summer. He is nowhere near the fringes of the St Mirren team. So I want to thank the Alloa Stats on Twitter for pulling me up about it. And just remember, listener, if there's anything in this podcast that Shaughan and I get wrong, get in touch. We'll happily correct ourselves in the next episode. And I feel as though the older I get, the worse I'm getting for remembering things. Uh-huh. And I can see myself, the years like 2042, I am at a football memories event at Oakle View and telling my carer about Colin Cram and getting stuff wrong about them. And they're like, aye, is that right, Craig? Aye, did he score a good goal? Aye.
People just like nodding their head and say, I just humour him. Just humour him.
Aye, Colin Cram, aye, was he good? Aye. Oh, if you'd have seen his goal against the Shire in the Scottish Cup. Oh, aye. Anyway, enough about my problems with delivery, but my problems with my declining faculties. We'll start this show by looking at Friday night's match between Hamilton Academical and Partick Thistle. Although Regan Tumultate gave Aki's lead with a well-taken strike, Brian Graham pulled Thistle level and Ben Stanway scored a cracker late on to win the match. And Hamilton, 8th place, a thoroughly ordinary season for them so far. But Thistle consolidated 4th place and they opened up a 6-point between themselves and Queen's Park in 5th. Queen's Park drew with Falkirk the next day. What's your thoughts on this one, Shaughan?
Let's face it, the first half was a bit of a non-event, wasn't it?
Yes.
Other than the revelation of Hamilton's 150th anniversary strip, very little happened in that first half at all.
I am a man who owns 2 gold football tops, but that Hamilton Academical one, it looked like a training bib from a kids' TV show, like a poorly made, like a low budget kids' TV show, where it's like somebody finds out there's aliens living in their treehouse.
So I switched the game on late. I think they maybe played about 3 minutes. So I was not expecting it at all. I had no explanation. So I did initially think my first impression was, why are they wearing some kind of training top over their first team strip? But they've had an inexplicable season for strips in general. Remember when they released their home strip? Remember the picture on Twitter that was just hanging on a coat hanger?
Yeah, was that one of just big red shoulders? Oh, yeah. It's horrendous.
And then everybody slagged it off, and then they went, but it's not finished. It's like, but this is the launch. It's the strip launch. It must be finished.
It's like what they do with video games these days. They just stick them out and then patch them later. And that's fine for like a digital product. How do you patch a football strip? Do you buy it with all the red down it, and then a couple of weeks later you've got to take it back to a put upon tailor who puts all these white patches on it?
I don't know if you saw the pictures that they put out. It might have been during the game. I don't know. I can't remember which Hamilton Twitter feed actually put it out. But it was, I don't know if it was the official kit launch, but they had somebody who, I think he maybe played with Hamilton in the 70s, and they had James McCarthy.
Yeah,
James McCarthy looked like he really regretted accepting the invite to hold a piece of gold fabric.
Yeah, this is a man who has played for some of the biggest clubs in Britain, played for Everton, played the Premier League, played for Celtic, played at a very high level, played for Republic of Ireland, and now he's on literally a freezing cold night in Hamilton, holding a piece of tinfoil with some guy who's probably made about 800 appearances for Hamilton. It was, but I mean, you know what? We're slagging off Hamilton. They weren't the worst dressed people that pitched up at New Douglas Park. Michael Stewart. Oh my
goodness! Could not believe my eyes. He looked like there was an episode of Dad's Army where they captured people from like a kind of German U-boat. He looked like the captain from that episode. I don't know. I presume at full time he was just colder. But I did notice that he'd completely covered it up with a big scarf. I don't know if he was aware of the comments online, perhaps, from the start of the show.
He looked like someone who discovered tobacco, and that was the and that was the outfit he wore when he brought it back to Queen Elizabeth. But I mean, if he did see the comments online, like he had a look and said, this isn't for that, I'm gonna look stupid, and he put a big scarf on. Imagine how warm his neck must have been. His neck must have been absolutely like pink and sweaty.
I mean, that's just it. If there was one person at New Douglas Park who did not need a scarf, surely it was Michael Stewart.
And sticking with the pundits, one of the things I found quite interesting, before the match, they were talking about Ollie Shaw, who was certainly going into this game was the top goal scorer in the championship. And the consensus was that Ollie Shaw had, capable young player, perhaps hasn't lived up to the expectation he was when Leanne Dempster called him. What did she say? It was like Lionel Messi and Pele rolled into one, something along those lines.
She certainly said that he was maybe the best young striker in Europe, something like that.
Right. Okay. Well, obviously, she got that one wrong. I don't know what's more embarrassing, that proclamation about Ollie Shaw or Lesser Hampden. But they were talking about Ollie Shaw and that he'd taken a step back to go a step forward. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't know about that. I think this is Ollie Shaw's level. And I think that when you saw him on Friday night, you're thinking, very much a championship striker and maybe a sort of fairly like so one in that, because he had two really good chances for Hamilton. One at 2-0, one to make the game 2-0. He flashed a header past the post, which he really should have put on target. And then after Brian Graham had equalised, he was put through on goal. Absolutely tremendous pass through. And he had a really half-hearted save that was quite easy for David Mitchell to make. Mm-hmm. So I just found that the discussion about Ollie Shaw quite moot, and it was subsequently followed up by his performance in that game.
In his defence, I do actually think he's having quite a good season. But I think you're right. I think Friday night pretty much summed up his very much his limitations. And you're right. I'm not remotely surprised that he is at the level that he is currently at. And I don't know if he can go that much higher. Maybe a better championship team, but certainly not a Premiership side.
Yeah, maybe St Johnstone next season.
Yes, exactly that.
And again, like my two things here are like slagging off our colleagues at BBC Scotland and goals. But it was a bit where Brian Graham, I think it was in the first half where he gathered the ball just inside the box and he swiveled and hit a shot and it hit the crossbar. And Al Lamont said, "Oh, that's vintage Brian Graham there." I actually said, "No, it's not." Like, Brian Graham showed what vintage Brian Graham is later on in the match with the equaliser. Because when I think of Brian Graham, it's somebody who's just scores tap-ins. And that's not a criticism of Brian Graham, because he's really good at it. And to have that strength and presence and instinct inside the penalty box, you ultimately have to have a lot of talent to back that up. But that's what I think of vintage Brian Graham, not Brian Graham peeling away and hitting the crossbar. So I did find that quite interesting as well.
It's funny that I put a wee bit in my notes about Brian Graham, because I do think that, I suppose it's similar to how maybe every summer for the last 6 or 7 years we've talked about the fact that Montrose need to turn over their squad. Like, there's always people that criticise Brian Graham and say, "Oh well, he's a wee bit old now. He's maybe he's on the wane." I think more than ever you see comments along those lines about Brian Graham online. And yes, he's 37, and yes, there's elements of his game that he's not as good as what he was 7, 8, 9 years ago. But he's still got 14 goals this season. Yeah. You know, he had 24 last season, 14 this season. Probably going to get 20 plus goals. Yep. Again, I still think he's doing really, really well at a decent level. Yeah,
and I mean, his goal that he scored, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not the goal was offside. What were your thoughts? I mean, when I first saw it, I thought he's slightly off. I think, I'm not sure, was it Jackson Longridge or Shaughan McGuigan that might have been playing him on at the back?
Might have been. So I was the same as you. Initially, I thought he's definitely offside. Even watching it back again, I thought, right, definitely offside. However, it is. I do have sympathy for the officials, and even if he was off, I think it might just be fractionally. Yeah, it's very difficult because the camera. So Brian Graham is in between the camera and the kind of far-sided defender, and because of the position of Brian Graham's leg, you can't quite see whether it's McGuigan or Longridge. Can't actually see where his leg's planted. So if he is offside, I think it was maybe just, rather than, I think there was a lot of comments about, he's a mile offside. I don't think that was the case.
Yeah, I think it shows how much VAR has ruined how we talk about football, because I can't remember if this is actually said, but if VAR had been involved, that would have ruled it out. But then that's why I hate a discussion about it, because it reduces it to, you're talking about something that effectively has no bearing on this game, so why discuss it? It might as well have said that, if Cristiano Ronaldo was playing up front for Hamilton, he might have scored those chances that Ollie Shaw had. It's just completely ridiculous. I hate it. I think it's not to turn this podcast into a VAR discussion, but that it has ruined football to watch it on the telly, to watch it inside the grounds, and to even talk about it. I mean, you know what was good? The game in England, I watched it on Sunday. It was Arsenal versus Manchester United in the FA Cup. There was no VAR from that, and that was just a good, daft, big knockabout game. And it just showed you how much fun football can be. Imagine the Scottish Cup final in 2016 when David Gray scored that header, and there was like a 120-second VAR check to check if someone had been, like, there was a tug in the box. It ruins the game. Anyway.
But you're right, though, it is quite frustrating. I mean, chat about VAR when the game has VAR is quite dull at times, but to then kind of throw it into a game where there's no VAR is also very dull.
I remember watching, was it East Kilbride United that, if VAR had been involved, it's not. It's never coming to K Park. I can guarantee you in my entire lifetime there will not be VAR at K Park. It's a moot point. Let's not discuss it. What we will discuss, though, a really good goal from Ben Stanway to win the game.
Yeah, really good. I must admit, I did really laugh. I looked at Pine Bovril as the game was going, and Chris Doolan made the double substitution, so he brought on Ian Fitzpatrick, brought on Ben Stanway. And Partick Thistle fan put something along the lines of, Fitzpatrick and Stanway, I don't believe this. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, literally within minutes, Fitzpatrick had set up Graham for the equaliser, and Stanway was scoring an excellent goal. So yes, as much as neither of those players have set the heather alight this season, it turned out it was a kind of masterstroke from Doolan, so fair play.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed with Ewan Henderson's contribution to that goal, because Stanway actually slips. And you think that's given the fact that the attempt to get up and bring the ball under control, that's a perfect opportunity to hack it away. Didn't do that. He was actually able to nudge Ewan Henderson, keep at arm's length before finishing. And I wonder who he was shushing in the crowd, because it was the Partick Thistle fans that he seemed to be shushing, and then started celebrating in front of them. What do you want? Adulation or silence? Mr. Stanway, make up your mind, sir.
Has he been getting slagged off this season? I don't think so. I mean, by his own admission after the game, he said he started the season fairly slowly. He's kind of recovering from injury. I just think it was a reaction rather than it actually meaning anything. Yeah,
aye. Unless there was somebody specifically who booed him that he was singling out and just wanted to shush him. But I can't imagine there's anyone with a really strong opinion on Ben Stanway. You know, it's not like immigration or anything like that. You know.
I mean, I struggle to get passionate one way or another about Ben Stanway.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Shaughan. You mentioned Pine Bovril there, and normally in my browser, my Pine Bovril tab is whatever the most commonly visited. When I type in P, it brings down Pine Bovril, and it's whatever division Stennismuir are in, which is like the first division forum. Recently, however, I've been spending a lot of time in the Premiership forum. And there's one thread in particular that I've been keeping an eye on, and I think you might have too as well. Is Jim Spence okay? The answer is no, but I just wanted to mention that. I think with this game, Shaughan, as well, it's the substitutions very much worked in Doolan's favour, and I think it's taken a little bit of the heat off him, because he had two back-to-back defeats going into this, including having been pumped 4-1 to Dunfermline Athletic last night, which was perhaps one of the most surprising defeats this season. So he'll have been very relieved and very satisfied with how that all had gone.
Yeah, I see after after 65 minutes, 70 minutes, certainly at 1-0, I was actually starting to wonder if Doolan might be in a wee bit of bother. Not necessarily, because of Friday night's game, but actually more so because of that Dunfermline result, because it came on the back of it. I mean, so I bought a stream for it, and Dunfermline were very good. Partick Thistle were really bad, and 4-1, like it could have been 5 or 6. I mean, it could have been a real doon on the day. So I kind of alleviates the pressure on him a wee bit. I mean, I know I've kind of spoken about this before, but I do think the pressure is coming because of the expectations at the start of the season. But I do think if you look at it, if you look at the squads that everybody has, I do think that Thistle probably 4th might be about right. Like, I do think that Livy, Ayr and Falkirk have better squads. But regardless, it's still, I suppose it has been a disappointing season for Thistle, not necessarily just in terms of results, but like performances as well. It's been quite bitty and frustrating, and like they haven't played well in general. Yeah.
What about Hamilton? Anything to say about them?
Hamilton just seem to have it feels like they've got like a reasonably big squad, but it's full of players who are all quite good for League One, might be okay for the Championship, if that makes sense. Like when they were... So Shaw, we've mentioned Shaw. So either side of him was Stuart McKinstry and Connor Smith, I think. Then they go off and O'Hara comes on and Todorov comes on. And again, it's like there's kind of 4 forward-thinking players who are all okay. And you can probably go through their entire squad, defensively, in the middle of the park. Guys who are fine, but nobody who's going to really set the heather alight. So it feels like they've maybe went for quantity rather than quality, and they are them, Morton, Raith, Dunfermline. I mean, one of those four are going to finish ninth, and I would not be surprised if it was Hamilton. Just they can't keep clean sheets. Score goals, to be fair, but certainly at the back they're a bit of a mess.
I really like Scott Martin. Every time he's on the telly, the occasions that I've been to see Hamilton, he is by far and away the best player. Now, every time I see him, I always think, why are you playing for Hamilton? Why are you not playing for, like, it's easy to say, but why are you not playing for like Livingston or Falkirk? Because I think he could really add something. I mean, both teams are very well served in the middle of the park, but I just think that he could thrive in that sort of environment under David Martindale or under John McGlynn. But yes, while Hamilton have gone for quantity over quality, they have done the same with their shirts. They've ordered lots of them, but they're just not very good. I reckon they'll wash once and disintegrate.
And the neck's too big. Like it didn't. like none of them seem to fit anybody. I reckon the Big Show could quite easily have got one of those shirts over his neck due to how big the necks were.
I mean, less than the Big Show, more like the Oddities. Did you ever see them in WWF in 1998?
Well, I don't think so. That's roughly the time I would have been switching off, but I don't think so.
Kurgan, Giant Silva, Golga, and Luna Vachon. Their music was from the Insane Clown Posse.
Not sure. Was Kurgan not the name of the baddie in the Highlander?
I don't know. I've never seen Highlander, but I have seen SummerSlam 1998 when the Oddities took on Kai and Tai in a 3-on-4 tag match. It's terrible.
Oh, right. I'm not aware of them, but I will look into them after this podcast.
There'll be someone listening to this podcast saying, "Are the Oddities?" and like chuckling away as they go to start their shift in the Games Workshop or something like that. So. Right, Shaughan, we'll stick with a Glasgow team, and the other game that took place in the Championship over the weekend. Queen's Park recorded a 0-0 draw with Falkirk and Grangemouth. We'll talk about that match just shortly, but I think it's really important to talk about what's going on at Queen's Park off the pitch. Now, to get a lie of the land at Hampden, the club currently have a ban on drums inside the ground, but some supporters have been lobbying the committee to lift it. They see it as an important way of bringing younger fans to the game, and I think you're seeing that all across Scotland. If you're seeing a group of young boys to the age about like 10 to 13 at the football, they all have drums. I think that's a universalism in Scotland. And so a survey was sent out by the committee to basically gauge the opinion of supporters. Now, the survey is very short. There's 3 questions in a box to add any additional comments. It was posted on Pie and Bovril. I had a look. The first question was if you're a member or a season ticket holder. Broadly the same thing. Imagine a membership entitles you to a free burger at the kiosk. I don't know. The second question is, would you be in favour of a trial admitting drums to home and away supporters for Queen's Park home games at Hampden? Yes or no? The third question. Visiting teams with a large travelling support, including a drum, may generate more vociferous support for our opponents and disadvantage our first team in matches at Hampden. Are you happy to have increased support for our opponents at key matches to the detriment of our own team? Yes or no? I just think that's perhaps the most leading question I think I've ever seen in my entire life. Do you want the other team to be better? Well, obviously not. I'm going to vote no for that. Okay,
I'm not entirely sure it's the gotcha that the writer of the question thought it was, because essentially he's saying, see, if we have a drum, sorry, if they have a drum, there's a better chance of them winning. Right, well, just you have a drum as well. just let Queen's Park fans, if it makes us a difference, allow Queen's Park fans to have a drum.
I quite like the idea of the club retiring the number 12 in honour of their drum.
But it's another example, and we've mentioned it a few times now, that in the last, whatever it is, 5-6 years or whatever, in terms of on the park, the difference from Queen's Park, from where they were to where they are now, is kind of night and day, and either mid-table in the Championship. But regardless, I think on the park they have done so well over the last few years. Off the park, it still feels like they're the same amateurish, ramshackle nonsense that they were before all this started.
I don't know, Sean, did you read the article on the website about the new multi-ball system that they've brought in? Very, very detailed, very interesting. That's actually, I think that's the most they've communicated with their supporters since they turned professional in 2019. Basically, it came with a wee diagram of where all the ball boys are going to be stationed.
I can't remember what. It was during one kind of particular disaster. It might have been when they got kicked out the Scottish Cup or something along those lines. And 24 hours later, they had something on their website about steak pie night. It's I don't know if that's what the fans really want at this moment in time. Maybe give that a day or two before you try and sell tickets for steak pie night.
I have absolutely no idea what Willie Hoy's long-term interests are in the club, but I do know where I can get a drink next time Pink's playing at Hampden. I think the things about a drum as well, I mean, let's be honest, Hampden, for the best role in the world, there is never going to be any proper atmosphere at a Queen's Park game at Hampden. Let's be honest, I think, certainly in the Championship, I'm thinking that the best they could perhaps get for a game, you're probably talking about for a big away support. See if Falkirk are doing pretty well. If Falkirk doing well, they will bring a big crowd. Partick Thistle, given the locality, if they're doing well, they will bring a big crowd. Queen's Park, certainly at the moment, aren't going to bring a big crowd. So the drum's just going to sound like just imagine someone in the Cathkin Braes with a BB gun. That's the equivalent noise it's going to be in the stadium. And I really don't understand why there is such a reticence on behalf of the club to bring drums in, because let's be honest, every club across the country has a young team with drums. It's just the way it is. We mentioned it at Alloa last time we were speaking. Stennismuir have got it. You see it, the Rovers have got it. Every team, Livingston, they've got their young team. Spartans, Edinburgh City have got a young team with drums. It's now becoming as commonplace in the game as Bovril. So you've got to get with the times, otherwise you're just locking off or maybe discouraging the next generation of fans to come through. It seems quite short-sighted. And to include a question like that in the survey, do you want to put your home team at a disadvantage? Of course not. No one wants to put a team at a disadvantage. But I don't know why you would word a question like that. It's very misleading. It feels very misleading.
And see the other teams you've mentioned about having a drum. Every single team that you've mentioned, pretty much everybody in the stadium will either be near the drum or will very much be in earshot of the drum. See if there is one team in Scotland who, if they were a wee bit worried about a reaction to the drum, that have a wee bit additional space within their stadium to move the young team and the drummer a wee bit away from people who might be annoyed by it. It's Queen's Park at Hampden. I find the whole thing just strange and just ultimately outdated, I suppose.
The games at Hampden now, it's been a wee... it was last year a game against Morton, and I suppose they open about, is it like a third of the stand? They just open the south stand for it, and even then it's so spaced out. You could stick them right down the front at the very edge and just let them have their... Let them have it. It's no hassle, and stick a steward on them just to make sure, just to make sure that there's no nonsense happens. Because let's be honest, things can get a wee bit out of hand when it's wee laddies all hanging out and being exuberant. But it's something that the club, all clubs need to do it, and that's why we're talking about embracing percussion instruments. But we'd spoken about it in the past. I'm sure we talked about Queen's Park, the failure of Lesser Hampden, and how the Queen's Park, at their best recently, they were playing at Firhill and then they were playing at Oakville View. Particularly that season, they were playing at Oakville View when they were on the final game going for to win the championship. That should have been in Glasgow, where you should have had kids enraptured and absolutely pumped to be going every week. Instead of, you can't see them doing that again anytime soon. And it just feels like such a missed opportunity to build on. I said it before, but the south side is just such a class part of the city. It feels really distinctive from the rest of Glasgow, and you've got a captive fan base there who are looking for an alternative. Such a diverse area. It's something that Queen's Park haven't tapped into, and just by having a drum there, seems like a bit of a no-brainer.
Aye, I mean, it feels like a huge missed opportunity, and you do wonder. I mean, what we're now 5-6 years into this Lord Willie hockey involvement in Queen's Park. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw or maybe even read about the interview that Callum Davidson done, which I think does tie into this whole thing about where Queen's Park, where they see themselves in the next year or two.
Is this when he said he was surprised about the transfers?
So he mentioned that at the start of the season, but he was asked, what do you see happening in January? And he said, well, that's for the club to decide. We need to decide what. Sorry, he said they need to decide what avenue they want to go down. And I thought it was quite interesting in terms of him almost essentially like distancing himself from it a wee bit. It was very much, they need to kind of make up their mind what they want to do. So I do think that Callum Davidson's starting to get a wee bit fed up with things at the club as well.
I find the Queen's Park project a very interesting one, but it's unfortunate these things let's be honest, Queen's Park could never find themselves in this situation if it not been for the generosity of Lord Haughey. Mm-hmm. It's like the idea of like turning professional with such a small support, and then the transfer these transfer fees that are getting from young players, it's great, but it just has to keep on happening. I think Queen's Park have done well. The fact that in space was it like Callum McKenna, Pat Jarrett. No, it's not Pat Jarrett. Alex Bannon. Alex Bannon was one went to and Rudy Payton. Sorry, Pat Rudy Jarrett Payton, wasn't. Yeah. But Alex Bannon and Rudy Payton, Callum McKenna. They made money off them, but that has to be consistent. Maybe this is the first stream of it. But I'm off the top of my head. Certainly, the young players that are coming into the first team, I don't think there's anyone that's close to being a saleable asset at the moment.
I mean, it's interesting. It was Scott Burns, who generally knows what he's talking about, mentioned today that Derry were in for Dom Thomas. So I do think if he was to go in the January transfer window, that probably is a wee suggestion that Queen's Park are not giving up, but you know what I mean.
Very much scaling back. Yeah, I think it's Dom Thomas. I can't imagine there's any other player similar to Dom Thomas's quality who Queen's Park could go, well, we're losing Dom Thomas, we're going to bring in this player. There's certainly with that degree of experience, that degree of quality, I think he'd be very, very difficult to replace. And as you say, I think that would be a real bellwether as to what the club's intentions are. Hopefully he doesn't go, hopefully he stays, because it's good fun watching guys like Dom Thomas. 0-0 draw with Falkirk, though I think that Falkirk could have won this if the boys had brought their shooting boots with them.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Queen's Park done well, and Falkirk were the better side. If anybody deserved to win it, it was Falkirk. Queen's Park probably deserve credit for at least restricting how many chances Falkirk had. I mean, generally speaking, you watch Falkirk highlights and you might see maybe half a dozen half chances or decent chances, but didn't quite seem to be the case at the weekend. So they deserve credit for that, but I didn't think they ever really looked like taking all 3 points. And you're right, on another day, Falkirk would have sneaked it maybe 1-0.
Yeah, and that point is just kept Falkirk ahead in the championship title race, because, as you mentioned, there were 2 games in midweek. Dunfermline Athletic took on Ayr United, Livingston took on Ayr Dronians, and both matches finished the way you might have expected. Ayr United won 2-0, Livingston recorded a 2-1 victory, and now it's only 4 points separating the top 3 sides in the division, albeit Falkirk have a game in hand over the other 2. We'll talk about the Livingston game first, if we could, because I've seen highlights for that one. I watched them at lunch at work today. That was a great use of my time. Could have gone to the gym, could have worked on my physical and mental health, but no, I chose to watch Lewis Strapp score an own goal and then get taken off injured in first half stoppage time. But it's an important win for Livingston, because it ended a really, really bad run of form, 3 consecutive defeats, and they looked as though they were in real danger of losing pace with Falkirk at the top. But I think that it looked like Robbie Fraser, was that his debut for the club?
Yes.
Yep, Robbie Fraser's coming, a fullback who's coming on loan from Rangers, and he certainly was involved. He provided a secondary assist for the opening goal, and he scored the winner himself, and he had one disallowed, and he he was involved as well. It was Chris Mockery held him off to finish the goal. So a very, very interesting game for the youngster.
He was, he got man of the match, but you're right, he looked excellent. I only saw Livingston's highlights, so it's very brief in terms of what I saw, like 5 minutes or whatever. But you're right, he was.
I think it's the full time whistle goes, and there's 30 seconds left of the highlights. Think, wow, right, couldn't have been a classic.
But yeah, they needed that. I think that. I know there's a long way to go, but I do think that run of 3 defeats that really hampers them. I think they've maybe given themselves a wee bit too much to do. I know Falkirk kind of stuttering a wee bit as well, but I just think that Livy, I feel like they're kind of lesser than the sum of their parts. And even against Airdrie last night, Livy, dominant side, should have won by more, but they almost kind of chucked that away at the end. I think Airdrie might have had a goal disallowed late on, or certainly went close late on. So it just feels that they are. We kind of refer back to this, but David Martindale said about how he's just looking forward to just Livingston playing this season and no worrying about other teams. I think he does. I think they are kind of stilted. I don't know how to describe it, but they are. I think they really should be kind of blown some teams away in the Championship, but that just doesn't seem to happen for whatever reason.
They certainly, only going by a 3-minute highlights package, so effectively that is 5% of the game we saw, if my arithmetic's correct there. Certainly looked a lot better than Livingston. Beg your pardon, a lot better than the Dronians, but that's not really saying much.
As you would expect.
The other game that took place that we mentioned about, Ayr United beating Dunfermline Athletic 2-0. I haven't seen this. I don't want to sound like, again, I'm going to mention for a second time, Jim Spence on one of those courier podcasts, just like looking at the league table and saying, like, Forfar in second place. Oh, Ray McKinnon's doing a good job there. I'm not going to do that, Son. So I will defer to you, because you actually did get to see the highlights. And I think we were really talking about the top of the table, but you thought that perhaps Dunfermline were a bit hard done by.
Aye, certainly what Dunfermline are now starting to do. I know we spoke about them when they played Falkirk, and we probably spoke more about we were impressed by the work rate rather than necessarily their quality. But they rattled Falkirk, it would be safe to say. They absolutely rattled Partick Thistle the next week. And what they've done against Partick and Dunfermline to a lesser degree is at least they're now creating chances. And they hadn't really done that at all season. Like they never really, as much as Chris Kane isn't a natural predator, they didn't create anything for anybody that was playing up front. But they are doing that now. And when I saw the result, I was like, oh, maybe that's a wee bit back to reality, I suppose, perhaps.
I dread and Pine Bovril that I think that they're just the squad. It's such a small squad of players. There was an injury and it necessitated a change. I think Ewan Otto had to move to fullback, and that sort of killed a lot of their ability to attack and take the game to Ayr.
Yeah, but up until that point, they were probably the better team, and then Ayr got like Ayr eventually opened the scoring, and defensively, that goalkeeper was at fault. He seemed to misjudge it. Then there was a few defenders probably should have cleared it before it eventually was put in. But I don't think 2-0 was necessarily reflected the game. I thought a good win for Ayr. Like they're now, I think Scott Brown mentioned the fact that they're now finding different ways to win games of football, which he thinks is quite important. But from a Dunfermline perspective, I do think they are now putting in performances which gives their fans encouragement, regardless of the fact that they lost the game.
John McLaughlin's done quite well in his interim period. That's a point against Falkirk where no one gave them a chance at all. A really, really impressive battling performance. Going out there and thumping Thistle 4-1, and then, giving it a really good go against one of the best. So you're taking on three of the best teams in the division, and you've all given them a really good game. That's something to build on. I just think they it's not helpful, the fact that Michael Tidzer's moved from Kelty Hearts. That seems to be held up with obviously, I think, haggling over compensation. That's not good for either club. But apparently he was there watching the game, so I can only imagine it's a matter of time. Maybe by the time this podcast is published, that he might be their new manager. Certainly in time for the Scottish Cup against, they've got Stennismuir actually on Saturday, so he might be in charge for that. But John McLaughlin has done well in that period. Used to play for Hamilton Academical. Not sure if you were if you knew that.
I don't think I did know that. That's
No, you did. It was I knew that because we were talking about it last time. I said I'd never heard of this guy, but I did see the Accies FC stats banter and info, and it said John McLaughlin. He used to play for us in the 80s. Thank you very much for that. I think if you've never heard of someone that somebody's name comes up in Scottish, I would check. That's the first place I would check to find out more about him. He's probably had some connection to Hamilton Academical. And Shaughan, before we move out of the championship, I know that Raith Rovers weren't playing at the weekend, but I thought it was perhaps worthwhile to catch up about life under new manager Barry Robson. We haven't seen much from him. He gave an interview on the club's YouTube channel where he spoke about his love of podcasts about high achievers and military leaders, and then he lost his first match against Ayr United 3-0 at Somerset Park. What have you made of him so far?
I was a wee bit worried. On the plus side, they'd done a Q&A. Was it Monday night? I think they'd done a Q&A.
Oh, did they? I missed that. Sorry.
I didn't attend it. I didn't listen. However,
I missed it. Sorry, I thought they posted it on YouTube. Like I'm
no,
going to drive through to Kirkcaldy to attend.
No, it was
Who's your
online.
Favourite military tactician?
I didn't tune in, but from what I gather, it was broadly positive, and because I think the start of his tenure has been reasonably negative. I don't think he'd made the best first impression. However, from the Q&A, apparently was quite good and reasonably positive. So we'll see how that goes. It's a tough run, though. I mean, Falkirk twice, then away games coming up, and their away form is poor. So we'll see if there's still the same kind of positivity in 3 or 4 weeks.
And you've moved on 3 players. Lewis Jameson he's gone back to St Mirren, but he's moving out to the United States to reunite with Neil Collins, I'm right in saying?
Sacramento, yeah.
And Fantaki Dabo?
Fankity Dabo?
Right, yeah, Dabo and somebody called David have both left the club as well on short term. I'd never heard of the third guy, this guy David. I'd never heard of him. Are they losses, the 3 of these players moving on?
They are losses in terms of numbers, but not in terms of performances or quality. No, I hope this is an indication that we're bringing in even a couple of quality additions would make a massive difference. But no, certainly in terms of the 3 that have left, no great loss as far as I'm concerned.
What are you needing to address in January? What does Robson need to take the club forward?
Striker. I mean, badly. I mean, Vaughan. Although, interestingly, they put up a picture today of Lewis Vaughan training, so he seems to be certainly back training, but wouldn't expect to see him until maybe next month. I think Jack Hamilton was back training, but ultimately they are threadbare in the forward areas. If we can address that, maybe just a big kind of bully that can hold the ball up and allow Connolly and Brown and Stanton, if he's playing behind them, to get up and support, and Dylan Easton, then I think they'll be fine. But as I've already mentioned, I do think they are in the equation for finishing 9th. We can absolutely forget about top 4.
Yeah, it's been a really shit season. I remember going in that preview podcast thinking I said they could win it, and then you talked me out of it, and I was like, yeah, well, they do well to get in the top 4, but I don't think many people would have foreseen it would have been as it's just disappointing as this.
I mean, I had them maybe mid-table, but I was maybe over-egging the pudding.
Yeah, well, let's under-egg the puddings, but I don't know what that means. That's a shite link. You try to do these things off the cuff. I don't know how your Rylands and your Stacey Solomons of this world can just link so seamlessly. I'd love to know how to do it, but Shaughan, we'll do a quick roundup of the 2 games in League One. Both ended in stalemate. Alloa Athletic scored an injury time penalty to record a 1-1 draw with Queen of the South at the Rex. And then later in the afternoon, Kelty Hearts and Stennismuir played out a goalless draw live on BBC Alba. We'll start by looking at the Wasps versus the Doonhamers. Benji Leeson opened the scoring after 4 minutes, but they would pass up a number of good chances, including missing a penalty in the other mark. And inevitably, Alloa equalised with a spot kick of their own in injury time, and Scott Taggart converted. That's Alloa are still in 4th place. Queens are 3 points behind in 6th. Give me your thoughts on this one.
I was there.
You were there?
I ended up going to this game. So
brilliant.
Saturday morning, Karen said, "What do you want to do?" I goes, "We can whatever you want. Do whatever you want."
Okay. I'll bite. Who's Karen?
And she said, let's go.
Just don't answer that one then.
She said, let's go to Alloa Queen of South. I've never been to Recreation Park. I goes, right, okay. Well, let's go to Alloa Queen of South. So that's how I ended up passing my Saturday afternoon watching the Wasps play the Dunhamers.
Oh, that's class. It'll be interesting to get your thoughts then. So what did you... We've spoken about teams. I'd seen Alloa actually the previous week. I wasn't too hot on them, but what did you think seeing them in the flesh? Because watching the new SPFL BBC Scotland tie-up that brings the highlights package together, I watched this and it looked as though that Alloa had a number of good chances, just couldn't quite convert them. And Queens, it looked like a fairly even game of football. Was that reflective in the scoreline?
So it's funny, I haven't watched the kind of official SPFL highlights, but I've seen people reference it and say that wasn't a particularly representative of what the 90 minutes was like. I mean, Queen of South got off to a great start. I mean, Luison scored a really good goal after whatever it was. Yeah, really good goal after 3 or 4 minutes. I thought for the opening 15 minutes, Queen of South were the better team. I mean, they've got a dreadful away record, not just in terms of picking up points, but scoring goals. But actually, I thought looked pretty positive here. I did think maybe between maybe the 15th minute and the interval, Alloa had plenty of possession without necessarily creating too much up top. And I do think part of the problem, as much as we have talked up in the past, Luke Donnelly, for example, really talk him up. But they had Luke Donnelly sitting behind
Connor Salmon
and Luke Rankin. And see, in terms of Salmon and Donnelly, I think you can maybe play one. I don't know if you get away with playing both, like in terms of like intelligent players, but they weren't really doing much running. Like they don't have a lot of pace between them. And I just felt that the 3 Queen of South centre-halves dealt with that fairly comfortably. Second half, yeah, Queen of South did look the better team, created more chances, had a penalty, which Lyon missed. To be fair, it was a good save from PJ Morrison. But no, I thought over the piece, Queen of South would have been worthy winners, and if it had finished 1-0, you would have said, well, that's absolutely fair enough. Mm-hmm. Peter Murphy, I don't know if you've seen his, as usual, lengthy interview on Queen of South's YouTube channel. It was quite intense. They discussed the penalty for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and he talked about the fact about how he was very annoyed at being awarded. I agree it was soft, but I can see why it was given. But no, over the piece, I thought Queen of South were the better side, and from what I can gather, speaking to Queen of South fans and reading about the game, it was their best away performance of the season. But Alloa were disappointing, I thought.
That's very interesting. You would not have got that from watching the highlights because it looked like Alloa were the better of the two sides. And that the penalty late on was just desserts for the number of chances they had. So that's funny. I think we've said this in the past that we should, every time we talk about something, it has to be done with a pinch of salt when it comes to watching highlights. Never base your judgment on highlights. You've got to back it up with your own keen eye. Well, let's say, what was I going to say? I was probably going to say something deeply profound and moving. Yes, that was it. We've mentioned in the past, I think it's been broadly acknowledged that Queen of the South need to strengthen their options up front. They have done that. They've taken Jordan Allen on loan from Falkirk for the remainder of the season. He was at Clyde. He was supposed to stay at Clyde for the end of the year, but he has decided to terminate his loan with the Bully Wee, gone back to Falkirk, and now he's out at Queen of the South. He made I think he came on for the last 6 or 7 minutes.
Couple of minutes.
Did you see anything from him at all?
Not in terms of his performance on Saturday. I do think it's a good signing, though. I think it's a big loss to Clyde. We'll probably come on to them. I mean, he's got 9 goals this season, but
I think so, something like that.
I don't think he's the most clinical of forwards, and like bear in mind, Queen of South don't create too many chances. I know I've just complimented them on Saturday, but generally one of their issues is not creating chances. But just in terms of his general all-round play, he wants to play on the shoulder of the last defender. His work rate's really good. So I think he's probably going to be a good addition for them.
I think so. Certainly he's probably a really good striker, other than the fact he's just not that clinical, because he can work the channels. He's strong. He's he's enthusiastic, he can put himself about and so on. So I think he will be a good addition. But that has been Queen of the South problem all season, just a lack of ruthlessness in front of goal. The other game took place, I was at this one, Kelty Hearts 0, Stenhousemuir 0. If there's anything you want to ask me about it, Shaughan, by all means.
So I started watching this game, went to the pub after the other game. I started watching it, and for about 15 minutes, I thought this game's been really good. And then I'll be honest, I started to zone out because it felt like it wasn't very good. But maybe you have a different perspective since you were there.
It's interesting because I was read the thread on Pie and Bovril about the match. And people, obviously the game broadcast on BBC Alba, a lot of people were really, I thought this game was quite entertaining. I thought, really? I didn't think it was too hot. I thought there were some interesting moments at Hammond in the first half. Actually, probably in the first 10 minutes, in fact, where Darren Jameson had to make a couple of good blocks in front of goal for Stenhousemuir. Matty Yates hit the post with a header. But I thought beyond that, it was a pretty flat game between two teams that were just going through the motions a wee bit. I think that Kelty Michael Tidds are such a big loss for them because I think he is vital to how they want to play. And maybe that's where the haggling is between Dunfermline and Kelty, because let's be honest, Dunfermline are gaining a manager, but Kelty are losing a manager and I think their best player. That's really difficult to replace someone with that level of somebody who can and has got such a strong positive influence in games for his team. And I think they miss him. There's a lot of youthful legs. I thought Lewis Moore had a good game for them. I thought Thomas O'Ware was the best player in the park. I think Tom O'Ware is the best player in the park very often. When I see him, I don't think that he gave Corey O'Donnell much of a sniff. And it was a game of football that took place that I have been to. That's how I describe it. That's how I describe it. I know you're looking for a greater degree of insight into it, but I think that maybe going into it, both teams would have been happy with a point. I think Stenhousemuir going into it would have been happy with a point. To go away to Kelty Hearts, a side who had beaten them 2-0 last time they played at New Central Park, to go there and largely do fine against them. I think that Kelty were really impressive on the transition. There were times where, in fact, I'll tell you the interesting thing about this match. Sorry, I'm rambling a wee bit here. But I think that Kelty were the better side for about the first 25 minutes or so, and they really seemed to be cutting through Stenhousemuir quite easily. But then Gary Naismith made a change. He was playing with a three at the back system. He moved from the three at the back system and put Kyle Banner, moved to a centre back and put him into the middle of the park. And at that point, they couldn't really break them down. Stenhousemuir were a bit stuffier. I think that match, it kind of settled into a bit of a interesting back and forth, but chances were really at a premium. That was probably the most interesting thing, was just that tactical switch from Naismith nullified them. And that's what I'd say there. I'm sorry that there's not much more to say about it, but it's a game with no goals. And I think it's those sort of games when you see it in the telly, it's fine to be at because it's your team and you've got an emotional investment, so these things matter more. I've watched a lot of the 5:30 kickoffs and just think the standard of football is really poor. I can't believe this is the kind of football that I have basically dedicated my life to.
What about, I thought the two managers were quite interesting. Not necessarily Tam O'Ware. What I thought was interesting about him was that he sounded like he'd just woken up when he was doing his interview. But in terms of Gary Naismith, I thought what he was saying was quite good. He was saying, I can't remember his exact words, but he said something along the lines of, he's absolutely determined that this season doesn't just fizzle out. Yeah. And he's determined to bring in essentially bodies. And I suppose he's addressed that to a degree already with Scott McGill coming in on Wednesday.
I think that as fans, we're all pleased to hear that, because I don't think at the beginning of the season anyone could have foreseen that Stenhousemuir would have a legitimate title challenge. Let's be honest. I think going back to a preview, I think I was like sort of like maybe what's opposite of cautiously negative, openly pessimistic. Maybe is that the opposite of the two? But I think that most fans, you said, survival would have been great. Anything else would have been a bonus. So the fact that we're in really strong contention, it's remarkable. And the league is still up for grabs. Let's be honest, Arbroath our favourites. I think that they will have been absolutely delighted with that draw. But they're by no means a sensational side. You know, I think that every team that's close by will start thinking, oh, I guess we get a wee bit of luck, we're able to get another player or so in, we can address that. And I think that there's talk of Scott McGill's come in, and I'm really delighted to see that the reports from Raith Rovers fans are all like really positive. Or certainly not really positive, but nobody's really got a bad word to say about him. Like I texted, as soon as we signed him, I texted you and you said can play in about 6 different positions, all pretty well. Probably best in central midfield. So that's great. That's good. I think we have improved the quality of the squad by bringing him in, and it might see James Berry, I think, will be loaned out elsewhere. I think there are another 2 names that I've heard have been linked with the club. Another defender, which is great given that Aaron Steele has gone back to Arbroath, and our striker, that's something we need. But I think that going back to the Aaron Steele transfer, I was astonished that Arbroath loaned him to Stennisweir in the first place, because he is a really good player. With Nicky Jamieson having a questionable fitness record and is likely to be out for the season, if you're looking for a big, strong, experienced centre-back who can play and play at full-back as well, that Aaron Steele's the man. And I think that given the fact he can only play for 2 clubs, I'm not sure if he's really part of Arbroath's plans, if David Golden and Colin Hamilton want to use him. But it's rather them not using him than Stennisweir using him and chipping away at their lead at the top of the table. So it's disappointing, but it makes complete sense from their perspective, because I think he has been a good player for Stenny in his 11 games, and he's a loss. So hopefully this defender they've got lined up, it's a name, I don't want to say too much in case it's not true, but it's a name that you'll be familiar with, but not in a way that you go, oh, but you go like, oh, like that.
Okay, well, I'll maybe ask you after we stop recording, or maybe I'll just forget. I think you'll probably forget. I don't think anyone... I just don't care.
Yeah, just nobody cares. Yeah, nobody cares. I'd look at the guy's Wikipedia page and it was like, oh, yeah. We'll go into League 2, Shaughan, and we'll just have a very whistle-stop tour around at the top of League 2. 3 games at the weekend and 1 through the league. The ones at the weekend: East Fife 3, Clyde 0, Edinburgh City 0, Peterhead 1, Forfar Athletic 1, Elgin City, and as a bonus, Peterhead played on Tuesday night and recorded another 1-0 win, this time against Stranraer. Very tight at the top of that table. East Fife lead the way. Peterhead are 2 points behind them in second, and Elgin are in third, but crucially they have played 1 game less, and it's a really interesting 3-way battle at the top for this one. We'll start with East Fife, recorded a really good 4-2 win over Edinburgh City through last week and followed that up by beating Clyde 3-0. 2 goals came courtesy of long throws, just caused chaos, and then I think one of the best goals we're likely to see this season from Adam Lareth. Really impressive stuff. Thoughts on this one?
I thought it was a game where the team that lost played really well, especially in the first half. I thought Clyde created chances. Maybe if they still had Jordan Allen, maybe one of them could have been taken. Pink Campbell mentioned that after the game, he thought Clyde had played pretty well. However, in terms of the goals, just didn't defend long throws particularly well. It was the 50th minute, 55th minute, both very, very similar goals. And you're right, that goal from Lareth was excellent. But just, it feels like there's a wee bit of momentum about East Fife at the moment. And I think like it doesn't take a huge amount of quality sometimes to win League 2. But you look at that East Fife team and they have like Andy Monroe and Brian Easton at centre half, who aren't going to give much away. You've got Kieran Miller and a kind of energy in midfield, and then they have the best finisher in the division up top, and Alan Troughton.
His finish for that second game was just lovely, man. Really, really well taken. And I don't think there are many other players in that division that would have finished it as gracefully as that.
Yeah, I mean that's him on 19 goals for the season. And the thing is, they've like. We wondered if when Nathan Austin got injured, we're like, right, well, how are East Fife going to deal with that? But I think Liam Newton started training again, Austin started training again, so they'll probably be back in the squad in a couple of weeks. So if anything, this East Fife team, like probably starting 11, is probably going to get better over the next kind of 2 or 3 weeks. So I really fancy them.
I saw that reading the Pine Bovril, people compare them to Stennismuir from last season, where a team who are just, they're not amazing, but there's just no obvious weaknesses. They can do some things very, very well and play for it. And I think that, you use that game as a pretty obvious example. Like, you're really good at long throws. Long throws are such a good weapon because it's like they cause chaos. It's like the footballing equivalent of a horse at the Grand National who's lost its rider.
Right, but that horse can't win.
Right, okay. Then maybe it's the equivalent of a dog running through a primary school.
That's a good laugh. It certainly generates excitement.
Yeah, exactly. Long throws are a good weapon, and if you've got them, you should use them. And you saw that Clyde found it very difficult to deal with them on 2 occasions. And that's ultimately what led to the win. And yeah, a fantastic goal from Raith. Just it wasn't quite a solo goal, but the fact that he picks up the ball up just inside the Clyde half, and it's like he's wearing ice skates. The way he's just going past him, and it's a lovely switch. You like just that wee 1-2 with the pass, and then to jink in, open up his body, and finish a really, really well taken goal. And something that you and I have said that Raith, when he's on the ball, he just looks really good. And there's probably a reason why he's not starting every week, and why he's in and out the starting 11. But certainly a very very capable, very exciting winger.
Did you listen to his post-match interview?
No, I did not, Shaughan. Like I say, I've the grab bags. See, if this had been a normal 3-game podcast, I would have come to you with statistics from this game. But I just watched it on the SPFL highlights. So right, there's the goals.
He didn't sound how I expected him to sound. Like, I knew he was of Algerian descent, but he very much sounds kind of upper class English. Like he has like a striking appearance with a kind of mop of curls, unique eyebrows, I would say, and then that facial hair. But he sounds like somebody who would maybe get voted off third in The Apprentice for failing to sell jam efficiently. Like just a very kind of I don't know how to describe it. Like very well educated, English well educated, I would say. Not what I expected.
I'll go back and watch it once we finish up, and I'll hear more about it. And I'll text you and say, yeah, you're right. He does sound like he failed to sell jam in The Apprentice and was rightly voted off. The next game that took place, Shaughan, we'll wrap up the 2 Peterhead games into one. They beat Edinburgh City 1-0 on Saturday. It was a Kieran Shanks goal midway through the first half. Pretty straightforward, a tap-in from about 2 yards. I think the impressive win because Edinburgh City have had a good season so far. But I think the big moment in the game was Eden Lynch's red card. I think the first one, he was 2 bookings. First booking, 100% a booking. He basically tries to give him a pump handle slam. That's another WWE reference there. There's probably somebody has just started their shift at the CEX and is like, oh, yeah, I know what they mean. But the second one is quite hard to tell. I'm not sure if Peter Pollitt dives or not.
Right, so I'll be honest, I haven't seen highlights of this game because I couldn't find them. Were they just on the SPFL?
Well, that's where I watched them from. That's where I watched them on.
Because oddly, I did see there is highlights of their win over Stranraer, but I didn't see any highlights of their win over Edinburgh City.
I was going to say that as well. Come on to that. Fair fucking play to George Frank at Stranraer for being able to produce a highlights package. I think I saw that it was not far off 7 hours from just to go from Stranraer to Peterhead. So to do that on a Tuesday night, go all the way up to Peterhead, record a full game of football with drone footage over Balmoor, cameras behind both goals to show like the efforts that the teams had, and then have it ready for. I think I watched it at lunch, so I think it was ready to go about the mid-morning.
I watched it this morning.
Phenomenal effort, absolutely phenomenal effort, man. And it's we praise Stranraer all the time because it's like it's good production, but that goes the extra mile. And on top of George Frank, we'll pull highlights package here. Fair play to anyone else who managed that journey. I think there's the camera cuts to them. I think there's about 5 fans. Like behind the goal, that's what separates the men from the boys, making a journey like that.
So you're right. Fair play to him, and fair play to like quite often Stranraer will have a lingering shot on someone or something, because obviously a couple of weeks ago it was like a fox. But at the Peterhead highlights, it was with no context whatsoever. Just maybe like 5 seconds of an old woman looking forlornly out of a window. No idea what was happening.
Do you remember that they were filming at Ainsley Park and there's a woman doing yoga in one of the flats? They filmed that.
Just lusting after her.
Brilliant stuff. But the goal was in that game. It was Jason Brown got the only goal of the game. I think he got it around the hour mark. I think it was good wins for Peterhead. I think that the division is going to be based on your ability to beat each other. Like between Elgin, East Fife and Peterhead, the games are going to be decided between when they three play each other. So really important to get the wins over Edinburgh and get the wins over Stranraer. But having read Ivo Den Beeman, who is an excellent poster on Pie and Bovril, he took the game in, wasn't particularly complimentary about it. He said perhaps the most interesting thing happened right early doors when I think it was Robbie Foster hit the post from an angle, and then after that not a lot happened. So
that doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. And speaking of things that don't sound good, Forfar Athletic won, Elgin City won. Russell Dingwall opened the scoring for the visitors, and then Cammy Logan equalised his first senior goal, curling effort from the edge of the box. Anything to say about Elgin, Shaughan, here? You've done a lot more homework than me. That's why it feels like you and I are doing equal stuff. I'm just reading out things that have happened. You're actually giving us an opinion. Big difference here.
I thought Elgin were a wee bit fortunate to get a point for this. I thought Forfar looked a better side. I suppose the issue with Forfar, I know you've asked me about Elgin. I didn't think they played particularly well. The issue with Forfar is, as much as it feels like they're playing much better now under Jim Weir, don't seem to be getting too many wins. And they desperately need them.
Yeah, I think what you see teams when they get into this problem, because there is now a little bit of a gap opening between them and the teams above them. And it's basically the Forfar directors will have to get the chequebook out to give Weir the players that he needs in order to arrest this situation. We've already signed Craig Slater from Arbroath. I don't think he'll be all that missed at Gayfield.
He went off injured in the first half.
Did he?
Apparently had quite a bad injury.
Oh, fuck.
So I don't know when he'll be back.
Oh, that's terrible.
That felt like a good signing, but already he's on the injury list.
Right, that's not great, because I think that Slater, I think, has acknowledged that he has played his best football at Forfar. He was really good for them, and hopefully Jim Weir can unlock that, get him back playing again and unlock that goodness. There's also street talk that they're in for Kane Hester at Montrose.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's say the word in the street, Pie and Bovril.
That would be a good signing. Do you not think?
He's not exactly. If Montrose could make the money back that they spent on him, I think Montrose would be quite happy to let him go. I don't think he's been a particularly good signing for them.
I think it would be a kind of bigger boon for Forfar than it would be a loss to Montrose. I mean, when he's stepping down a level to League Two, I think that would be an excellent signing.
Yeah, I suppose he's played his best football at League Two, and I think does he stay in Forfar, stay in Montrose? He certainly stays in that area, so it's handy for travelling. He plays for Montrose. They're just round the corner from Forfar. It made no material difference. It feels as though that move to Montrose, I think that for having spent so much money on him, you're expecting at least 20 goals a season from him, and I don't think he's quite given them. There were times, I remember seeing with Elgin City, he looked miles ahead of anyone else there. Like for Elgin playing like a 4-5-1 formation, he could do everything. Back to goal, could run the channels, could play on the shoulder, link up play, had a really good relationship with the likes of Brian Cameron, but I just haven't really seen that from him at Montrose. So maybe Montrose cutting their losses isn't necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, Forfar do need something to pull themselves out the tailspin. So probably you would imagine Elgin would have seen that as not as straightforward, but a game they could have won, and to have not won that, they worry they're slipping away, but they can bring themselves right back into it if they can win their game in hand. Yeah,
they have dropped a few points recently. I mean, we went to see them at East Fife. Yes. They lost that.
Yeah.
They got pummeled by Stirling Albion. Was that the week after? Then, they beat Peterhead. That was a good result. Peterhead I think I had somebody sent off in that game, but regardless, that was a good result. But if yes, it's an away game, but when it's the team that's bottom of the league and you're going for the title, which presumably Elgin now feel that they are, then it does feel like 2 points dropped, especially when East Fife had such an impressive result against Clyde.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that, Shaughan. And I want to leave the listener with an apology. It's just there was just too much, given the fact that a lot of the games were called off because of bad weather and like a gas leak. It really threw us askew. And I think when we were looking at League One, it's like, well, we spoke about Stennisfair and Alloa last time. We're going to have to talk about them again. Here we go. We're talking about Falkirk. We talk about Falkirk all the time. And then it was supposed to be a neatly contained podcast. It just grew arms and legs. And it's become, rather than being somewhere people can come and maybe get a bit of insight, it's just become, my performance of this was horrendous. I'm really sorry.
I think it's been absolutely fine. Listen, we'll ask for feedback, but I think it's been broadly fine. I mean, not great by any stretch of imagination, but okay.
Right, well, that's the best. I mean, this is a free podcast, so if you're not happy with the work that goes into a free podcast, go fuck off. Go and listen. Go and listen to Jake Humphrey or someone like that. See, that's just jumping all the way back to when we were talking about Raith Rovers. I actually had to listen twice to Barry Robson's interview because I thought he said he was listening to podcasts. I thought he said like the High Achievement podcast, that he mistook, like he got the name of the High Performance podcast wrong. But no, he likes high achievers and military leaders.
I still wonder if he got the name mixed up and it is actually Jake Humphreys. I do wonder about that while listening to the history of chlorine gas in World War I or whatever he's listening to.
Who's your favourite military leader?
I'll be honest, I don't think I have one.
I don't. There's an article on Wikipedia that I go back to, like when I'm bored. The Battle of Austerlitz is considered to be the greatest piece of military strategy of all time.
Right, okay.
It's
Napoleon. What war was that? On Napoleon, right, okay.
It's Napoleon. He was fighting against the Allied forces, and ultimately it led to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. But I think what he did was there was a particular piece of land that was like quite high up, and it was like amazing, like advantageous. And what Napoleon did was he feigned illness, and he basically gave up this piece of land. And he tricked the enemy into thinking that he was vulnerable. So the enemy attacked him, but at the same time they attacked, there's another corps were making a march towards it, and it was all timed perfectly that this other mob came round and basically just like put them in the pincer and just completely routed them. And ultimately, like I say, it led to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. So that's pretty impressive. So worth watching. You'll be able to find documentaries on Wikipedia about it, and it's a really interesting Wikipedia article. Documentaries on YouTube, and read the Wikipedia article. Sorry,
he was always fighting, wasn't he? Napoleon, quite an angry man, like Jim Spence.
Let's just go and see the last thing that he put on his Twitter page. Just see. Goal Rangers like a Manny. That's the last thing they put there.
See the thing about Jim Spence. You know Harvey Dent, Two-Face,
yes,
from Batman.
Yes,
I think if Two-Face was to have a Twitter, it would be similar to Jim Spence's in terms of like he'll just flip from ranting about probably some kind of group that is on the margins of society and being quite unpleasant, and then just putting like a picture of Hamish McAlpine and saying, "Oh, great goalkeeper! Remember clapped his dug-in Camperdown Park in 1987."
So saw the goalie outside Morrison's having a rare blether with him, right next to post about how pedos should be chemically castrated.
Exactly.
It's a real mixed bag. Aye, that's what happens when you spend when you spend too much time, one in Dundee and two online. That's what happens to you.
Move and switch off your internet.
Switch off your internet. Spend less time in the snooker room or whatever his equivalent of the snooker room is on his iPad. He's getting frustrated at Nicola Sturgeon. there's more to life. It's a beautiful big world out there. But Shaughan,
enjoy it.
Enjoy it. We'll leave it at that. We will leave it at that. You know, it's Scottish Cup weekend. Plenty of action on the go. I'm on Friday. I'm going to go to Edinburgh City versus Clyde at New Douglas Park. That'll be a lot of fun. I actually do think that'll be a lot of fun. Be interesting to see how they get on. I mean, we're going to do a bonus podcast. Before we do that, we're going to be talking about the winners and losers from the season so far. I think it's just gone beyond the halfway point. So I think it's quite a good time to take stock and look back at folk who have had a good season, folk who have had a bad season. Certainly one of the people who'll be coming up is Michael Mackindo. Watched his post-match interview following the Peterhead game. The guy can cut a promo. Yeah. Say what you like about him. Don't lend him a tenner, but he can cut it. The guy can cut an extraordinary promo, and I think that you learn. I think you learn so much about the game from listening to them.
Yes, yes. No, you're right. I think he comes across very well. I jumped on the Michael Mackindo train much later than you, but I'm glad I have.
Yes, so if you want to listen to this podcast where we were going to talk about winners and losers, you're going to have to get your checkbook out. Go to patreon.com/terrace podcast. Have your credit cards details at the ready there. There are dozens of podcasts on there, hundreds of podcasts, all worth your while. So please do. You'll find something you like, including the stuff that Shaughan and I are going to talk about. So if you are going to a game at the weekend, please enjoy your football. But unlike the fans who abused Nickelback at a concert in Portugal in 2002, who threw bottles, this is really funny, they were throwing bottles on stage, and Chad Kroeger, there were two songs into the performance, folk throwing bottles on stage, some of them hit the band. Chad Kroeger says, do you want to hear some rock and roll, or do you want to go home? Someone threw a stone and it hit him right in the head.
There's your answer.
They just right, see you later, and they walked off stage.
Did you? I think you went down that rabbit hole while googling him and Avril Lavigne.
I was on Avril Lavigne's Wikipedia page, as you do. You're hip hop, you're flip flopping between the Battle of Austerlitz, and then you start reading about Complicated, and then I was just reading about a relationship with Chad Kroeger, and thought, wow, that is so me and Shaughan, and so that's why I had to bring it up there. So unlike the people who attended, enjoy your football, but unlike the people who attended that Nickelback concert in Portugal in 2002, enjoy it respectfully. Thank you very much.